Things changed after the bar. Not dramatically, and not all at once. That was the problem. Nothing exploded, nothing collapsed. Instead, everything shifted half an inch closer to dangerous. And suddenly, Mara noticed him everywhere. Not because he was trying to be noticed, because now she understood what it meant when he looked at her too long, what it meant when his voice lowered slightly around her, what it meant when silence stretched between them and neither of them rushed to fill it. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. 3 days passed without them being alone. 3 days of meetings, emails, glances that lasted half a second too long. 3 days of acting normal while tension quietly tightened underneath every interaction. Mara was beginning to think maybe that's how this would continue. Controlled, contained, manageable. But then Friday happened. The conference room was too warm, or maybe it was just her. Mara sat halfway down the table, laptop open, trying very hard to focus on the presentation happening across the screen. Numbers, forecasts, department restructuring, none of it stayed in her head, because Julian sat at the opposite end of the table. And every time someone else spoke, she felt his attention drift back to her. It wasn't obvious or reckless. It was worse. It was careful and controlled, like he knew exactly how much was too much. At one point, someone asked Mara a question. She answered automatically, professional and clear, but when she finished, Julian looked at her for 1 second too long, and Lena noticed. Mara saw it immediately. The slight shift in Lena's expression. Tiny, barely there, but enough. Her stomach tightened instantly. The meeting continued, but the room no longer felt safe. Afterward, people filtered out slowly. Chairs rolled back, conversations started. Mara packed her laptop quickly, avoiding eye contact. "Mara," Julian's voice said, quiet and professional. Still enough to send heat down her spine, though. She looked up carefully. "Yes?" Julian stood near the head of the table, one hand resting lightly against the chair beside him. "Can you stay a minute?" Her pulse stumbled. Lena glanced up from across the room and Mara noticed. So did Julian. The room emptied slowly after that. Too slowly. By the time the door finally shut, Mara's chest already felt tight. Julian waited until the silence settled, and then he said, "You're upset." Mara let out a quiet laugh. "That's becoming your favorite observation." "You are." She crossed her arms lightly. "You looked at me too long." Julian's expression barely shifted. "I was listening to you." "In front of other people." His gaze sharpened slightly. "That's what this is about?" "Yes." Silence stretched between them, and then Julian stepped closer. Not enough to corner her, but enough to lower the distance. "You think someone noticed?" "I think people aren't stupid." His jaw tightened slightly. "Mara, no," she interrupted softly. "This is what I meant at the bar. This gets messy." Julian studied her face carefully and then lowered his voice. "Do you not want me to look at you?" The question landed harder than it should have. Mara looked away briefly. "That's not fair." "It's honest." Her breath caught slightly. "You make honesty sound dangerous." Julian's expression softened. "With you, it is." The room felt smaller suddenly. Too quiet, too close. Mara swallowed. "This is exactly why we need boundaries." Julian nodded once. "You're right." The agreement surprised her. Too quickly, too easily. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That was fast." "Because you're right," he repeated. "And you're okay with that?" His mouth curved faintly. "No, I'm not." The honesty again, relentless. Mara exhaled slowly. Julian. He stepped closer again. Now only a few feet separated them. That look, he said quietly. What look? The one you get when you're trying to convince yourself to walk away. Her pulse jumped. You notice too much. I notice you. The words settled low in her chest, dangerously low. Mara looked toward the glass wall of the conference room instinctively. People still moved outside, co-workers, normal life. Meanwhile, her heart was racing over a man standing too close in a room that suddenly felt too private. This is what I'm talking about, she whispered. Julian followed her gaze toward the office floor and then back to her. You're scared someone will figure it out. Yes. His eyes held hers steadily. And if they do? The question stunned her slightly. Mara stared at him. That doesn't scare you? It probably should. That's not an answer. Julian's jaw flexed faintly. No, he admitted. Losing this scares me more. Her breath faltered. Silence. Heavy. Complicated. And then, a voice outside the glass wall laughed loudly. The spell cracked instantly. Mara stepped back. Julian did too. Distance returning like instinct. Reality rushing back in. This can't happen at work, she said quietly. Julian nodded immediately. It won't. You promise? His eyes stayed on her. Yes. Something about the certainty in his voice made her chest tighten harder, because she believed him, and somehow, that was worse. That evening, Mara stayed late intentionally, not because she had work, but because she needed space, some distance, time to think without feeling him everywhere. The office slowly emptied around her. By 8 p.m., most of the floor was dark. Only scattered lights remained, including his. Of course. Her phone buzzed softly beside her keyboard. Jay, still here? Mara closed her eyes briefly and then typed. Trying to finish something. The reply came quickly. Me too. Her stomach flipped. She stared at the message before typing. Don't start. 3 dots appeared, stopped, and appeared again. Jay, I wasn't trying to lie. A small smile betrayed her despite herself. Her phone buzzed again. Jay. Okay, maybe a little. Mara shook her head softly. You're impossible. There was a small pause, and then, Jay, come here for a minute. Her pulse spiked instantly. She stared at the message. That's a terrible idea. Jay, probably. Another message immediately after. Jay, 5 minutes, then I'll leave you alone. Mara looked toward the glass office across the floor. The light was still on. So was he, waiting. This was how it happened every time. Not dramatically, not recklessly. One small decision at a time. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, and then she stood up. Julian looked up the second she entered his office, and the door remained open. That mattered, and Mara noticed immediately. You left it open, she said softly. Julian leaned back in his chair. Yeah. Why? His gaze stayed on hers. Because you asked for boundaries. The answer hit unexpectedly hard, and Mara swallowed. That's dangerously considerate. A faint smile touched his mouth. I'm trying. Silence settled again, but different this time. Softer, but no less charged. Mara stayed near the doorway. You said 5 minutes. Julian nodded. I did. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Julian said quietly, I almost walked into your office 3 times today. Her pulse skipped. That's not helping. I know. Then why tell me? His eyes held hers steadily. Because pretending I don't want to is exhausting. The honesty wrapped around her like heat. Mara leaned lightly against the doorframe. You really don't know how to make this easier, do you? Julian looked at her for a long moment before admitting, No, I don't. Silence stretched between them again, but now it felt different. Not unstable, not frantic, just intimate. The kind that builds slowly enough to become dangerous before anyone notices. Mara's voice lowered. How's everything going? Julian understood immediately. With her, she nodded once. His expression shifted to something tighter. Heavy. Mara's chest tightened. Do you feel guilty? Julian looked down briefly and then back at her. Yeah. The answer came without hesitation. And me? His gaze darkened slightly. You're not the part I regret. Her breath caught hard. The office suddenly felt too quiet again, too personal. Julian. He stood slowly, not rushing towards her, not closing the distance immediately, just standing. I know, he said quietly. But neither of them moved away, and somewhere in the silence between them, the truth settled deeper than ever before. This wasn't just tension anymore. This wasn't temporary. This was becoming attachment, and attachment was infinitely more dangerous.